Hey everybody, welcome back to Magic Mind. You are here, my friends, because you, like me, know that magic is an art form with the ability to move and entertain people like no other. But you know that developing this skill requires diligent practice and a detailed understanding of the craft. So my goal with this show and company is to provide you with the community to introduce you to the people and ideas that will help you to develop your magic. Today we have Alan Rorrison. Alan Rorrison, the creator. Alan Rorrison, you've seen him on Penn and Teller Fool Us. He's constantly coming out with new things in the market, in the industry. Smoke 2.0, one of the highest selling products of all time in our industry. He's the only Scottish magician I've ever spoken to, and he makes his own props. How is that for an intro?
That would certainly do. I just like that you had to add in the Scottish part to get
Well, yeah,
past the accent from the
it's
get-go.
from the get go. It's necessary. You-
Yeah, I swear your accent's pretty darn good when you put it on.
oh, thanks. You've got to get into it. All right. Okay, I'm not gonna try. That would be too painful for me and the listeners for me to try and hold that up. But feel free to put on your Scottish accent while we're talking.
It's not a problem, but one thing I will say, I say this at the start of most interviews now. If this ever hits YouTube or that kind of thing, and you want to have a little bit of fun later on, try using the auto caption on YouTube and just see what the heck it comes up with. Because it comes up with some hilarious stuff.
All right, we'll have to
It,
try
it,
that.
on one of my demos, it came up with a bit that said, "So all you have to do is go out and kill your gran."
Oh,
I,
maybe that is
I
what you said.
no, what I was actually saying was like, what you have to do is just take it in your hand and put it away, and it just completely misheard it because of the accent.
Wow. I'm trying to think of like a scenario where that could happen, and then someone takes it as an instruction, and then there's a whole crime built around the fact that Google couldn't pick up on what your Scottish accent was saying. I'm not sure how
Um,
that would play out, but that would be a good sitcom or something.
there has to be something Darren Brown can do with that.
Ooh, why Darren Brown? Why can't you and I do it?
I am not pretty enough for being on screen anymore. You are, main juice. You could be the on screen. I'll be behind. We're fine with that.
Oh,
That's good.
thanks. Speaking of being behind the scenes, let's
Hmm.
talk about making props because of all the things I know about you, and I did a little research for this. Thank you very much. I found that you making your own props is one of the most interesting things that I've heard any magician do. To be honest, it doesn't seem to be a very common thing, and yet just in the background alone, you'll see cosplay masks and the gun from Portal, uh,
Yeah,
all sorts of
stuff
things.
everywhere.
So, can you talk to us about how you got into that and how you use that in your own magic?
Yeah, sure. The whole making side of things. In fact, I think saying that not a lot of people in Magic make their own props might be. I, I think there's more people that do it than you think. It's just a lot of people tend to just make a magic prop and that's it. Whereas I got into the sort of build industry with my first job. When I left school, I went and became like a welder and engineer in a shipyard. So I learnt my trade that way, and I learned how to like draw things up in CAD and block things out so we could with an ends to make them. And when I left that job, I just kind of kept that mindset. So I started just building random things I wanted, like props from like games and movies and all that kind of thing. So if there's been something I've seen I really liked, I just make it. Yeah. So it's how do I describe this? It becomes an illness is the best way to put it. It's a sickness. It's like every time now I watch TV and I see something that I like, I'm like, oh, that's, and I take out the notepad and it goes on the list. And I have an ever growing list that I'm just never going to catch up to.
What are you most
Um,
proud of?
Most like just prop wise,
Yeah.
probably the Blade Runner blaster.
You
I
can't
go,
just say that and then not show it.
yeah, let me grab it. That's right here. And I'll need to angle the camera down. So Adam Savage spent about 10 years making his, but he made a proper full metal one. I spent maybe a little under 7 to 10 years making this one.
So, 7 to 10 years?
This was before 3D printing was a thing.
Ah, okay.
And you're looking at it thinking it's just a chunk of plastic. But what you have to keep in mind is it is exactly the scale it has to be, completely in size and everything. Both triggers work. The magazine cartridge works and comes out, but that also houses the electronics for all the lights. So the thing fully lights up. The Steinlicker bolt on it works. And the revolver section also works as well. So this took, because of the reference we had at the time, we didn't have good reference photos of this. When this prop was made, there was 2 versions of it in the film. And they were both used at different parts. So it was like 2 slightly different guns, and there wasn't like a canon version of this gun. And then we got a bunch of good reference for it eventually. And once we got the rest of the reference we needed, I went and finished building it. I need to update mine slightly. I still have my grips. In fact, this will explain how much of an illness this is for me. The grips I have on here are smooth completely. That was what the original stunt prop was like, and that was basically the first reference I had. So I sculpted these panels here up in clay, made a mold, cast them in a resin, got the colouring right. But now that we've got the full proper reference, there's 2 versions. You have the smooth, and then you have one that has a checked pattern on here for grip. So I'm going to remake these up with the check pattern on them, and then make it so I can interchange them depending on how I feel. But yeah, I went crazy with this. I even got in the fire, the blast burn that's on the tip of the original prop as well. I went crazy with it. But it becomes a real sickness. That's to do this kind of thing to this quality. It's the same as any prop maker. You either really have to love it, or you just have to have a sickness in your head where you can't help yourself to do it.
So, with that sickness that you're talking about, that compulsion to make things, how often do you find yourself making things?
Daily.
Daily? All right.
Daily. I have a small Etsy store, so whether it be just running a mold that I've already made for someone who's made an order on the store, or doing something for that, or working my way through the list. I mean, even with like a props list, it could be something of films and all that kind of stuff. But I also have a prop list of magic ideas. I've got like notepad upon notepad upon notepad of just like, even it could be like a 1-word description, like let's do a PK touches that uses someone's phone, or like just like a random statement, and then I'll dig out from that and figure out what I can do to make that a reality. And most of the time, again, it's building a sort of prop for it, or a gimmick to make it work. It's like, even with the chop glass, there wasn't a chop glass or chop cup out there I liked. I primarily do like gigs at bars and that kind of thing, and I made up a chop cup purely for that, just so it would fit into the bar I was working. And I didn't know at the time if I was going to continue using it after I stopped working at that bar. So I mean, I've got like boxes full of stuff that were just made for one venue.
Wow.
Yeah, but look at it this way. I just had my first kid. My first kid is due in July, and the spare room we have here had like just boxes full of stuff. And some of it was props we had made for TV that never get aired. Some was stuff that did, but I couldn't pass on to anyone for NDA. Some of it was like one-off props I made for a specific show or a specific bar or venue, that kind of stuff. And I can't sell the stuff on. I can't give it to anyone because of the NDAs and all that kind of stuff. So I literally had to take 4 boxes, like big, massive tubs of magic props, and just dump it. Just take it to a dump and get rid of it.
Are you allowed to say what shows those were for?
No, NDA.
Wow.
If
pretty
you,
serious.
it's going to sound in a non-ego way. If you just Google what I've done or IMDb it, you'll know some of it.
Okay, cool. So let's talk about how people can start getting into this if they want to make their own props. Let's say in Magic. Well, that's the whole question. How can they do it?
Do you mean how do you start creating, or how do you actually start making the props after you've had the idea?
Let's do both, and let's start with
Sure.
the creating, because I think that probably comes first.
I used to answer this in a very stupid way. In fact, I used to answer it in a very arrogant way, to be quite honest. I used to just say, I can't explain it. It's just something that happens. Like, I have an idea and it just pops in there, and then I just follow through with it. But I've now since had a proper sit down and try to figure out what the whole process was. I mean, I figured out it kind of splits into 2 camps. One is a little bit back to Let's go to sound. One is back to front, and one is the correct way, but sounds back to front. So we'll do the back to front way first. That'll be like if I discover a move. Like, let's say there's a card move I really like. And like, there's got to be a way I can use that somewhere. If I'm fidgeting about and a card does something funny in the deck that I've never seen before, that way I have a move and I have to figure out a routine to fit it. And for me, that's a sort of back to front way. You should have an end goal in mind, like a final routine. Like I want a person to be able to like sit down and feel me touching them from across the room. You should have like an end goal and then work backwards from that. That's the correct way to work it in my eyes. But again, sometimes it just happens like I'll discover a stupid move and I'm like, yep, I need to figure out a way to use that. Or I'll just find a weird thing. In fact, on our first holiday, it would have been my girlfriend at the time, that's my wife. We're sitting watching a bunch of flamenco dancers on stage, and I dig out a notepad and start writing. And she turns around and says, "You're the only sort of guy that's standing with a bunch of pretty women dancing about on the stage, not taking like looking at the women or taking notes about the women, but writing down that the lighting is making your lipstick change from red to blue." So it's just silly things like that. So for the creating side of it, what I would recommend is just always take a notepad with you. And if you see something odd, like even just out and about, like there's a specific, or there's an advertisement in a window that does something funny when you walk past it, take a note of it. You might be able to use it later on. One good thing I will say though is make sure your notes are clear, because I do have a lot of notepads where I've just got little squiggles in there of man's head moves poster. And you look back at it in 5 years, it's useless.
Well, you know why it's unclear.
Yeah, because I didn't take proper notes.
No, it's because you wrote it in Scottish. No one can understand Scottish.
Oh, should have seen that one coming. But yeah, so what I would recommend in the creative side of it is figure out what your end routine would be first. I think it's the most logical way to work it. Otherwise, you're just going to be turning your wheels trying to create something for the sake of creating something.
Well, you mentioned something very briefly, which was a PK touch with a phone. I don't know if that was something you just made up or if that's an actual example. But
no, I actually do a routine where you take someone's phone and you put it in their hands and you talk about phantom limb sensation. Now, in fact that's a prime example, actually. That was a good callback. So after I became a welder and all that kind of stuff and I left that, I went and became a nurse. That was what I originally wanted to do. But in Scotland, it's kind of like a tradition. Your dad just tells you at the end of 5th year in school, got a job for you, you're going to go do it, and that's it. And it back then, this is like, oh God, 20 years ago now. It's just what you did. So when I went and became a nurse, in training, I learned about phantom limb sensation, and it was just part of one of my dissertations. And it's basically when someone loses a hand or a limb, there will be times where they feel that it's still there. It can be like pins and needles in the hand that isn't there, or they can feel a proper pain that isn't there. And for years, they've done loads of studies to try to figure out what the issue, or not even the issue, what was happening with the nerve to make that happen. But now the whole study's had to change its route a little bit, purely because people with all their limbs are now experiencing it. And the problem we have is our phones. Our phones vibrate. Our phones and our watches vibrate all the time.
Whoa, is that real or is that just the best scripting ever?
It's very real, but it's now my scripting.
Wow.
Now, the problem you have is, in the scripting I use, is sometimes you'll have your phone in your pocket and you'll feel it vibrate. I mean, I know some people who like create little custom vibrations so they know who's what and they know what ones to ignore, but there'll be a time where you'll feel it vibrate. You put your hand in your pocket, you dig out your phone and you look at it and there's like nothing there. There's no text message, no nothing. And it's just your body's now taking a sensation, and so your leg or whatever pocket you keep this will feel it rub gently, and it'll trick the brain into thinking it felt it vibrate. And then I, at the time, pretend to phone the person's phone, and I say, "How many times did you feel it ring?" And they're going to say 4. And then when they look at their phone, there's no phone call. In fact, it's in airplane mode, so it couldn't have received a call at any time. So that's a prime example of me having a scripting line first. I really like the scripting hook of that. The whole idea of people are actually feeling this is a thing. If I turn around to say to someone, have you ever had the time where like you felt your phone vibrate in your pocket and you've went in and pulled out your phone, but like there's been no one there, like there's been no text, there's been no call? And I think about 90% of people can relate to that. So what I done was I took that scripting hook and then figured out a method to make it work.
Can you say the end of that sentence once more?
So again, I figured out the scripting hook. So the whole script for that was a hook for me. That's what I really liked.
Okay.
And then I just looked through what I had learned. Like, I'm a chronic collector of skills. So if I
was gonna say that doesn't seem to have anything to do with welding or 3D printing.
but what I'm using here is electronics. It's an electronic device I've built that makes it happen. So I basically went and years ago I went and learned electronics because I wanted to build. What was it for? Might have been the portal gun actually. No, it was before that. Well, some for this gun and some for. I mean, I've learned basic electronics all the time, and then when Arduinos and all that kind of thing came out, I started learning those. But that's another thing that we should say as well. Don't just, if you want to start creating for Magic, don't just look at Magic. Go and listen to all the music you like. Watch all the movies you love. So, like, go to lectures. Like, choose a lecture. Like, if there's an open day at a college near you, like, there's a lecture, a day on for electronics. Go to it. Spend $20 and go watch it. You never know what you're going to pick up. You need to start getting your brain ready for applying all these little skills you've learned to methods for Magic. So the more you can learn in all these different fields, the better. You don't have to be the best at them, but you have to know enough to help you apply it. Like with the likes of the PK touches, I knew it was going to be electronic and I knew exactly how I had to build it. But I wouldn't have had that information there ready if I didn't go and learn how to like build circuitry and all that kind of stuff. So it's a good bit of advice to just learn little bits from each trade you can. It helps.
So now, that's interesting. What I want to know now is, obviously you have all these skills at your disposal, and you're able to use them when you have an idea. But do you ever try and connect them with a theme? Like, let's say you're putting a show together, or do you just kind of build whatever enters your mind, and you don't really think about how you might string together effects? But, yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah, so I think what you're primarily asking is, do I create with a running theme, like, for example, a full show, or do I just create all these little pieces and then put them together when I can?
Kind of. Do you do shows that are themed, and when you do, how do you decide what effects to put in or what effects to build for that?
Yeah, the current parlor show I've got going just now, the one I'm running just now, is fully themed, and it's all about my hand. I had an injury in my hand about a year and a half ago now that I didn't know if I was going to lose a finger on my left hand. And the whole show starts with the recovery process and me trying to figure out what I can do with cards, and then it moves on into a couple of little things I learned to hit. In fact, the first thing I do is any card, any number, but it's like completely hands off. And the whole part of the story is in the hospital. When I was sitting in the ward, I couldn't really do anything, so my wife went and grabbed me some cards, and I used the nurses. So the nurses became my hands. They shuffled them, they made all the decisions, and they do everything. And then one nurse's card appears at the other nurse's number. So that bit kind of ties in, and then I move forward into where I start to get my hand back, like try to do like little dealing drills and all that kind of thing, and it comes into a sort of gambling style routine. And then it moves into at the very end of the whole parlor show but I kind of got used to the idea of risking everything for a bit of fun. Like I didn't mind like putting my hand in danger anymore. Then it moves into a roulette and a animal trap routine. So I mean, there's a full cognitive flow in this one, and I do script things that way. When I do that, I try to lay out the overall story first. I don't worry about what tricks are going to be in there. To begin with, so I'll say, I've hurt my hand. I was in hospital for a little bit. I needed help. I was worried. I then figured out I was going to have to practice to get my hand back up to speed. Then I figured out once I got there, I was going to miss the whole idea of practice and the fear of not being able to do anything again, because that's the kind of thing that drives me, the thing that pushes me forward. So I started doing dangerous things again to try and give myself a little bit of that feeling back, if that makes sense, a little sort of like sadistic little bit of way. So I had that sort of storyline drawn out. Then I figured out the tricks to put in into each section. Now, luckily, the first part of this is true. When I did mess up my hand, I told my wife to grab me some cards, and I messed about trying to figure out what I could do, and that's how that any card, any number was made. That's why I designed it up. And in that, I had a strict set of parameters. If you don't have hands, I can't use my hands. They need to do all of the work. So that's basically how that was made. And again, that you can pick up that any card, any number now on my new At the Table lecture. So with that first one, that one kind of fell into my lap. So when I was creating that, it's just a case of, look, I can't touch them. It's that simple. Then the middle section is, luckily it took gambling routines for me. I've always loved gambling routines, but my hands I've never liked how they look in my hands. And I'm not using the I have a small hand or small hands excuse, but in fact, you'll probably agree with this as well. You'll probably see a magician perform at some point, and you look at what they do, and you think, you're doing the move fine, but it just doesn't look right in your hands.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what it is. You're just doing something that doesn't make it look right. And for me, gambling routines work that way for me. They just don't look right in my hands. The good thing about this, the whole storyline was, at this point, it could look terrible as long as it worked.
Sorry,
it had to look.
The whole storyline looked terrible as long as it worked. I'm not sure I followed that.
No, in this whole storyline, the first part was me trying to figure out if I could do anything with these cards because my hands. The middle section of the whole show is me trying to build the strength back up into my hand by doing like dealing practice and all that kind of thing. And the really nice thing is that I could do like some really bad bottoms, some okay seconds and all that kind of stuff. As long as it was like me trying to say, I'm trying to learn how to deal again. As long as the end when I hand the cards over to the spectator to like do all the reveals and the magic happens in their hands, that part is good.
Wow, you know what? This is impressively constructed from a theatrical point of view. Like, obviously, you have the tinkerer in you and the electrician and the welder and all that, but I'm very impressed by how well this is thought out from a story perspective, which is something that a lot of magicians I know just don't even take the time to consider.
Even with the bar sets I do, they all have a theme. They all have a story. I like to create little bits, and don't get me wrong, I like to create like, here's a trick. It's just like a one-hit thing, and that just is what it is. And then put it out there for people to play with. And when I like create those little things up and I release them out, it'll generally be something I've created. I've tried to fit into a show for like maybe a year or so, and it's still not quite gelled right. And I'm like, I'm not going to be able to make this work properly for me, so let's see if someone else can, and let them take it and fit it into what show they're doing. But yeah, everything I do is fully scripted. It's like with EVP. When I put that thing out, that was a weird creation. That was created for a TV show that just never got used. One of the heads at the magic department at the time, in fact, no, the production team didn't like it, so it just never got aired. They didn't think it was going to fool anyone. And then I progressed on, and it was originally a full hour and 30-minute show, just with that one gimmick.
What?
Yep. So there would be a full seance show with people getting replies, like whispering behind their ear, replies on their phone, when they phone in their friends, like their friends' relatives would come through and all that kind of stuff. And I learned very early on that, let me explain the whole hour and a half thing first. A part in the middle of the show is basically a spirit cabinet. So you'd have all the whispering come through, and then what a lot of people don't get is EVP can load information onto a phone. It can also take information.
Oh, that's scary.
Well, it's basically a speaker and a mic, if you want to look at it in a very simple sense. It's a system you built up that you can control with your phone and load information on, but it also has a mic there as well. So if you have this close to their phone and you have it running and it's going through to someone else's phone, that will hear everything that's going on. So when you have them phone up their phone, I'll put their phone on the table and I'll say, if I put in these headphones, I don't want anyone else to hear, and it's very nice and open there, it's on the table in the middle of the stage, they can hit a button and they're talking to their friend and they're going to ask their friend for some information. And they would get that information. I was getting it too. So I was just adding it to the spirit slate when I needed it and all that kind of stuff, or in the spirit cabinet. So in the show, there'll be a little bit of me talking about how I used to call it audio chatter. It's like it used to be when you put some headphones in that had some bad batteries. If you used battery powered headphones, you'd hear like a chatter. That's just picking up random frequencies. But a lot of people thought it was like an EVP, like Ghost and that kind of stuff coming through, and I would go through the whole routine that way, and then do the spirit cabinet bit. And then again, it's just the same gimmick, pulled that information from the spectator. But the reason I rigidly scripted this whole show, and again, the whole show, my scripting for the whole hour and a half, every single night would not change, not one word. I left no room for kind of slop or wiggle room or back and forth with the spectators we had, because in this more sort of formal setting, and it's when you're talking about like ghosts and that kind of thing, people didn't really want to heckle too much. I don't know why. It just never happened. But I learned that I had to script it really rigidly when I first tested it. I made up the gimmick and I tested it at Sportsman's Dinner. And at the time, I had a set of 3 statements that came through whispered in a creepy Scottish accent, basically. And the 3 answers on this little loop of a sound file were, yes, we're all good, and you're next. The you're next was just to be a bit creepy.
Mm-hmm.
And I was doing it to this girl I knew from school. And so just, you're going to ask yourself some, like, say your nan some questions. Like, who's passed on? She's like, my nan. Cool, just we'll have a little bit of fun with this, nothing serious. In your head, I want you to ask some questions. So in your head, just ask it. And she sits there. I go, in fact, for the recording device, just say it out loud, don't worry. And she says the question. And she goes like that. And I think the first question is, Nan, are you there? And then obviously the answer was yes. She's like, are you happy where you are? And the answer next was obviously the no. And then, unfortunately, the third question she asked was, look, you died of breast cancer, mum's now been diagnosed. Am I in any danger? And pardon my language, but the frickin' answer that came up next was, you're next.
Oh, wow.
So I had a very unfortunate night of this girl ran out crying. And again, it's a Sportsman's Dinner. I'm not there performing, I'm just there as a guest. So I had to go out and I stripped the damn gimmick out of my arm. I took everything off and here's what it is. There's nothing in it. I fully explained it. Afterwards, she was absolutely fine with it. We have a laugh and a joke about it now, thankfully. But that could have went very wrong, do you know what I mean? So that's why when I made up the full show for it, I scripted the thing to an inch of its life. I didn't want any of that. In the show, I'm talking about ghosts and all that kind of stuff, and at points during the show, I say I obviously don't believe in ghosts. I don't believe this kind of stuff can happen, because I don't. But I didn't want anything like that happening. I want them to have a spooky experience, but I don't want to hit home so much with them that it's going to ruin their night.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. Just that one set of questions that she happened to ask and how perfectly they fit.
I had done it like, this is when I just made up the gimmick. I had done it like 40 times beforehand. And every single other person had made up like funny questions, like stupid, silly questions. And the whole year next always got a bit of a chuckle, but it was, I should have realised that just with one serious question that phrase in there, I put the phrase in to try and make it seem a bit creepy, but I think it scared me a little bit how just that one serious question turned that phrase into something life-destroying. I didn't like it. I absolutely didn't like it. That's why with EVP we just do the standard, let's get a couple of recordings on your phone and then that's it, with the tutorial. But if you really put some thought into it, you can create some scary stuff with it, if that's what you want to do. I wouldn't recommend it, but
yeah,
some weirdos out there will.
It's amazing how powerful magic is, and that's not something that we always see, because usually it's card tricks and stuff. But when you get a story like that, someone runs out crying, it's kind of a reminder of what I guess we're capable of on an emotional level.
Yep. The one story I have with that kind of thing, it was a weird reminder for me as well, as I bought myself one of the GM close-up mats, and it's one of the ones that looks like a Ouija board. A beautiful mat, and it's good for practicing stuff. And I was just in a bar by myself, headphones in, and I'm just practicing just a dealing routine, and I'm using this mat. Pardon me. There we are. So I'm just practicing with this mat, and then this guy comes up and starts to have a full-on debate with me about why I shouldn't have a Ouija board with me. And then it literally turns into a fight. The guy's trying to hit me.
What? Oh
That's
wait, you have to. There's. I think there's a missing step there.
No, he was like, I just don't think you should be messing with Ouija boards. You shouldn't have it in public. He's like, you're putting everyone here in danger. My wife talks to spirits and says they're bad things. And I was just like, look, I have a different mindset than you, I guess. It's just a board game. I just like the imagery of it. And he just got angry.
Wow, is that
It's
typical in Scotland?
not really. It truly isn't. But it was a healthy reminder that not everyone is as up to speed as we would like to think they are nowadays.
Yeah, yeah, I understand that. So tell us how you became so theatrically minded. Because again, I was a little surprised when you talked about how much of a story and how you started with the story and you didn't even have any effects at that point. You just wrote a story. So
Yeah.
where did that start? Did you ever do theater in school, or did you I don't know, have a passion for movies, anything like that?
I love movies. Just about every single trick I have put out is either named after a movie or a song or a band. I'm very into like my films and my music, but the whole storyline thing originally came from when I was younger. I still kind of do it today, but I control it now. I used to suffer from extreme stage fright, like massive stage fright. Um, and when I was in primary school, which is like I don't know what you guys would call primary school, is like junior school. I don't know.
It's elementary.
Elementary, right? So when I was in primary school, the teacher knew I'd done a little bit of magic, and she pulled me up and like kind of bullied me slightly a little bit into doing some tricks. One of them didn't go quite right, and obviously kids that age, I got a little bit of ridicule for it, and it kind of instilled a healthy stage fright to me. And the only way I could find around that was in my head to make sure I know where I'm starting, where I need to be in the middle, and where I need to end up. So I started just scripting it that way, and then it's at that age I then figured out that's basically what every single film does. It's exactly what they do. They give you a premise at the start, give you a little bit of filler in the middle, and then give you an ending you want to see, and that's it. So that's the only reason why I really properly started to script things. And then the music helped with figuring out pacing. Because I play and build my own guitars, just because I've always played guitar. Really, I've played it since I was 9. But on that side of it, that let me figure out that I only need to keep people's attention span for 3 minutes. That's it. You'll find most pop songs are between 3 to 5 minutes long because that's your attention span for one unit of time. Most humans, that just is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Most albums are 45 minutes long, 30 minutes to 45 minutes, because that's the entirety of your attention span for that post of a day. That's just how human beings work, unfortunately. I think that's why quicker media like YouTube and all that kind of thing are taking over TV. So the music side of it taught me pacing in that sense, and then I applied the whole story arc to the sort of model I laid out for music. So in a standard parlor show, it's between 20 to 30 minutes. I usually have 2 floating tricks in there that I can add in if I've got a really good crowd. So again, the first trick should last about 3 to 5 minutes. The middle trick I'll usually have, if I can, about 5 to 7. And then after that, if it's a good group, I've got 2 floating tricks I can add in, then the final trick. And then at that point, it doesn't matter if you're going to perform to the same crowd, if your show is going to be longer. At that point, if you're in like a venue that has a bar, call it a bar break. Because at the 20-minute mark, your people are going to want another drink. And they're sitting down watching you, and they're going to start getting agitated and annoyed, and that's when you start losing them. So at that point, even at the 20 mark, even if everything's flowing great, just say, right, cool, we're going to stop that. So first little bit of the show, hope you guys enjoyed it. And if you've got like a prediction on the go, you can say to the person, make sure if you go to the bar, you take that prediction with you. I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a bar break. I'll see you here in 5 minutes. And it lets you go refresh yourself up a little bit, get a drink of water and do what you're doing. So it's, yeah, the whole pacing side of it just came from that early age. It was just I've just realised I've went off the tangent here. I always do. Yeah, so stage fright led on to pacing myself right, just so I knew where I was. And then understanding where I was let me kind of figure out how my spectators were feeling when I was watching them. And then that kind of all ties in a little bit to how the show and how the story is going to flow for me.
Say once more how you got an idea of what your spectators were feeling.
Well, it's not a case of what they're feeling. It's just how, on a general sense, this isn't for everyone. This is just a sort of broad stroke, and I get
Okay.
that's not the thing you should always say, but this is just generally what it is. So an attention span of a standard person will go between 20 minutes to 40 minutes at a push.
Right.
That's why most music albums fall in a 30-minute range.
Right.
So I will tend to, again, if I'm in a venue, like it has a bar or all that kind of stuff, only do, like, break your show up into 20-minute chunks, 15 minutes to 20-minute chunks. Because you'll have your attention for that 20 minutes. As long as you break it up into 5-minute segments of fun, punchy things to watch, you'll keep their attention. But at that 20-minute mark, they're either A, want to go to the restroom, or B, they're going to want to just move in their chair a little bit, or C, they want to go up to the bar for another drink. That's just the attention span. That's what you have to work with. So at that point, I will just stop and I'll say, cool, cheers, that's the first part of the show done. We'll be back in 5 minutes. Go to the bar, have a little bit of fun. I might see you at the bar. If you do, buy me a shot. I'm only kidding on. I've got to stay sober for the show. The last bit's a bit dangerous. And I will have a joke into how the last part of the show is going to go and then move on in. But it's even just with me as well. It's if I'm sitting watching a concert or that kind of thing, I cannot like sit at a concert. If I go like a music show, I need to be standing and moving about. Because if I'm just stuck in that one place for an hour and a half, 2 hours, my attention span goes and it becomes the worst concert ever.
So now how do you do an hour and a half parlor show?
In which sense?
In the sense that, based on what we know about humans' attention spans, that seems to be...
Just break it into acts. So when I say an hour and a half, that's me calculating as well. With a parlor show, I want a bit of back and forth. Okay. This isn't like the full EVP show. I'm going to talk to people, and there's going to be time where I'm bringing people up on stage and all that kind of stuff. So I realistically need about an hour to 10 minutes worth of magic. So I'll do the first 20 minutes of the show. Then you have, I clearly say at the end of that little bit, and I'm ushering the spectators down off the stage and back to the chairs and make everyone give them a round of applause, I will actively say, cool, we'll take this chance for you guys to be able to go hit the bar and all that kind of stuff. I'll stop for a couple of seconds so you don't miss anything. It lets me go grab some water as well. I'll see you guys soon. If you want to hit the restroom, feel free. I'll see you guys back here in 5 minutes. And that's it. And I plainly say, I make it like an act in a stage show. So in a stage show, you would get the show, then you would have a break in it because the actors need a break. And it's at that point, it's not purely for the actors. They get that you need to go to your restroom. You need to go get some more water or whatever you want. So, I mean, they understand that to keep the attention, you have to give them that a little break. And there's nothing, it's just what works for me. If it doesn't work for anyone else, I do apologize, but I find it works very well for me, and it's worked for thousands of years in the theatre.
Well, guys, we're going to take a quick break. This is the end of Act 1. Alan will be back in 15 minutes. Okay, no, that's interesting. And that's how you've always done your stage shows, right?
If it's a full stage show, the standard full stage show for me is usually an hour. That's with, I have a compere act at the start as well, usually. So I usually just break that down into 2 straight half hours. But if it's a full stage show and you're in a stage environment, there's no bar in the room, there's no other like stimuli in the room, it's just you. People know what they're walking into there. They get it. That's they bought the ticket to come and see that. However, I still give them in the middle of that a 15-minute break. If you don't, you're going to lose them.
So I have 2 questions now. What do you personally prefer doing in terms of close-up, parlor, or stage? And then, where do you draw the inspiration for the stories that you base your shows off of?
I probably would say I prefer close-up bar work.
Okay.
I think it's because it kind of dances the line between parlor. There's still a little bit of a... How do I word this? It's like a little bit of a stage for you with the bar there. So I fully prefer that. I just always have. And if you're in a bar or you have a parlor show in a sort of bar venue setting, it kind of gives you a little bit of leeway to be a bit more sort of cheeky chappy and have a little bit of byplay with people.
Mm-hmm.
So I like the more loose feeling of that. Now, don't get me wrong, I love doing a full stage, like proper show, but I like having a bit of byplay and back and forth and like being touching reach of your spectators. It's more fun that way. Um, and what was your second question there?
Where do you draw your inspiration for the stories that you base your shows around?
Oh, it's just primarily through experiences, really. Like the sort of parlor show I'm doing now is just the experience with my hand and the fear that I would not be able to use it again.
Mm-hmm.
Um, with the EVP side of it, that all kind of stemmed from, in fact, that was from a movie, to be quite honest. That was from a movie called White Noise. The first movie had Metal Keaton in it, it was all right. Second movie was terrible, don't waste your time. But yeah, so I love movies. Any type of film, I will give it a go. So a lot of my inspiration just comes from ideas and movies. Because I wrote I say I wrote, I've just finished writing my new stage show, and it came
Oh,
from one line and one of the Men in Black movies, just one line, and it's just there's a character in it, and the guy just says, "Sir, if I may," and that was it. This guy could touch you and show you like the universe and that kind of stuff in it. Um, and he would walk up behind the guy and he just said, "Sir, if I may," and then he would touch him on the shoulder. And I just liked that idea of this guy knew that he had such a power, and he just asked permission in such a nice, polite way. It just kind of seemed really endearing to me, so I wrote a full show and a full premise on it. And it's a mind reading show, and at the base of it, but it goes along that whole story arc of figuring out you have a sort of skill or a power. I don't want to call it a power. A power makes it seem a bit odd, but you've got this skill that might scare other people, and like trying to figure out a way to make it palatable and acceptable to other people that you can do this, and to try and teach them that you're not going to abuse it and all that kind of thing. And it's a full storyline. Um, so I've just finished getting the sort of script for that, and I've got about 70% of the sort of mentalism and magic that I want in there. In fact, there's one piece I want to take out, but I'm not taking it out till I true up the other method I want to switch it for.
okay.
But yeah, I mean, it can come from anything. It could be a line in a song, or it could be one line in a movie. I mean, "Start Fi Me" it's 4 words, just creating an hour show. But it's, how do I word this? The only how do give me a sec. I'm trying to figure out the best way to word this.
That's all right.
It can just be 4 words, but it depends how the person delivers them and what it makes you feel at the time. It's really that simple. It's like you'll get happy when you hear a song you really like.
Mm-hmm.
So figure out what part of that song that is making you happy, and this is
Mm-hmm.
what everyone does with music, and then go find other things like it. And it's the same with words. There's going to be sentences that people say or how someone says them that kind of pique you up a little bit. Figure out what that is, and then try and deliver that to other people.
So, do you use music in your shows?
And one of them, yes, and most of them, no. I'll use the music or that as the inspiration, and then I'll tend not to. For me, a lot of people use music in shows as a sort of crutch.
Okay.
If it feels like the moment isn't strong enough on its own. Now, don't get me wrong. I fully understand that music can fully highlight a good moment. If you've got a beautiful piece of magic, I mean, Hugh Ho Jin is really good at this. He always seems to pick the perfect piece of music that goes along with whatever piece of manipulation he's doing at the time, and he is godly at it. He's like, I can always watch this guy and be happy.
Can you say the person again?
Hugh Ho Jin. He won FISM.
Okay.
He was a manipulation act, and he is truly astounding. But he figured out the correct piece of music to go with that act, and it really heightened it. But I see a lot of the sort of, I wouldn't say the less trained, but the more up and coming sort of magic acts not have the music right, and I could tell that they're trying to use the music to invoke a reaction and make the magic better, but it's just not quite working. It's a bit more jarring, so I've just kind of always stayed clear of it.
Okay. I need to process a little bit. There's a lot of lessons in there about storytelling.
It's a weird one to talk about.
I know, but it's not something that we tend to talk about. You know, the market's so flooded with effects and all that I think there's a big lack for stories. And if this is something I mentioned this in the last interview as well. Peter Turner, for example, incredibly open about the methods he uses and all that, but he closely guards his scripting, and that's where like the art comes in, and that's the important part to figure out. So it's really worth thinking about and taking the time to look at it.
It's, again, scripting is the thing. Again, I think that's why I kind of hold on to mine as well a little bit.
Yeah, no, I understand.
You can give 15 people the same methods and make 15 people create the same show, but if all 15 people use their own scripting and different scripting, it'll be vastly different shows. And even with Pete, I don't disagree with him protecting that a lot, because his scripting will work for Pete.
I completely agree.
It suits his style and it suits his character, and my scripting will work for me and it will suit my style and suit my character. And it's, again, I think that's a good point to make. You just kind of need to go out there, and it's the same with comedians. Learn this very early on from the get-go. And again, this is one of the only surefire ways to kind of go over stage fright as well. You just need to go out in front of an audience and you need to bomb a few times.
That hurts.
That's it. You just got to do it. It's the only way you're going to learn. It's the only way you're going to learn how to deal with a spectator when you bomb in front of them. Now, some will be courteous and understand you just had a bad night, and they'll be nice about it. But some are going to call you on it, like to your face. In Scotland, that happens more often than not. So you got to learn how to deal with those people, and how not to get into like a sort of heckle off with them, but just address what they've said and then move on. And deal with your feelings as well, because when a trick doesn't go right, it sucks. I mean, it really sucks. Nowadays, if something doesn't quite go right, I've got a couple of little lines I use, and I just move on. Don't let it ruin your day. Just get on with it. So to anyone that's coming up and they want to start learning their own scripting and figure out what to say, write a little script for yourself with a couple of tricks. Go out, start using them. One thing I will say is try and listen to what you're saying in your head as you say it, because a trap a lot of magicians will fall into is they'll go into this. Oh, this is a trick my granda taught me, and they'll start doing like a scripting that doesn't fit them. Mm-hmm. And it sounds odd coming out their mouth. And again, it's the same thing with your hands. You could be good at something, but if it looks odd in your hands, don't do it. Listen to what you're saying, and if it sounds odd coming out your mouth, don't do it. I mean, I could use one of Turner's scripts verbatim, but it would seem horrible coming from A, this accent, B, how I would deliver it, so I just don't. He's good at it, let him do that, I will use mine. I fully encourage anyone to go and figure out their own. It's the only way you're going to get something that seems genuine.
So where are those training grounds for the new people to practice? Like, where can they go to experiment?
Oh, God, what was the name of that book? If you give me a second.
Yeah, sure. No problem. I'll keep them entertained. Oh, I thought it was a physical book that you had to go find.
Oh, no, it's in this cupboard, but I realised I have Google in front of me, so I don't.
Google? You don't have to get up. That should be their tagline.
I can just use Google for this. Stage craft. There we go. In fact, it's not even just books. There's loads. If you type in just stagecraft for magic,
well, sure,
you'll find hundreds. In fact, give me a second. I'll grab the one that I primarily learn from.
All right, sure.
One moment.
What I wanted to ask him is, he's talking about how you can learn to get better at scripting and all that, but without practice. Really what I'm trying to ask is, where are the stages that you can go to practice, right? You can always try things in front of your friends and stuff, but I found it's a lot more complicated to try parlor and stage especially, because it's not casual. You need to really put in some time and effort and oftentimes money to find a stage. So I want to hear if Alan has any insight about what sort of places or venues or ways you can do that. Oh, there he is.
There we are. So for anyone coming up and around, this book is great. It's absolutely indispensable. Some of the information out now is slightly dated, but it all is still very, very relevant. And it's Showmanship for Magicians, and it is by Daryl Fitzkey. It is on there on camera for you so you can see it.
Okay.
It's a great book. I absolutely love this thing. In fact, this is the third copy of it I've had to buy.
Why?
I used to take it on the road just to read if I was like on a plane or that kind of stuff. I lost one, and the other one got water damaged. So,
Okay.
and it comes in a set of books, so I didn't want to have like one missing, and yeah, but OCD that kind of way as well.
I understand. One of the questions that is kind of connected to this is where can you not only learn to script and learn to storytell and all that, but where can you practice? Like, what are the actual ways, especially with stage? Because close-up, you find your family and friends and stuff, but stage, I found, is a lot more challenging because it's not casual. It takes some time and effort and often money to figure out a stage. So do you have any insight about where people can practice that kind of thing?
Sure. You want to find if you're of legal drinking age, find a pub that has a function room. That's basically it. And ask them for a stage in the corner. And just walk in and say, what night are you quiet? Find out what night they're quiet and say, look, I'm going to start putting on a stage show in the corner. It's basically me jamming out new ideas. Is that cool? And then just set it up that way. And it gives you an active audience.
Oh.
So, I mean, you can do it with that kind of thing. And now, you're going to be hard-pressed to find a bar, a venue that won't let you do it. Because if it's a night they're quiet and they have no other entertainment on, and you're saying, you're going to get this for free, I just want to like hone in my craft a little bit and have a little play, they're going to let you, because in their eyes, you're either A, going to be good, which is just good for them, which will then lead into you being able to talk to them about maybe putting on more proper shows and ticketing it or having them pay for a show and that kind of thing. If you're terrible, they're just going to have something for, and again, this goes back to you're going to have to die and bomb on stage at some point. They're just going to have a slightly comedic thing for the punters to watch as you just slowly die on stage. That's okay. And it sounds harsh. I get it. It sounds harsh and it sounds horrible, but you're going to have to die on stage at some point to learn how to deal with it. They're getting for entertainment out of it, and again, you're trying to hone in your craft, so something's got to give somewhere. Alan. If you're younger, go to a coffee shop or that kind of thing and do it, or even your school. Put on a show in your school gym, like a little mini show for as many people that want to turn up on one of your lunch breaks one day. There's always venues you can go to and find for free to begin with. Always. It's just getting over that little fear of failing in front of people, that little weird hurdle. That's the primary thing that holds people back.
This is the point of the show where, one, I thank you for coming because this has been awesome. And honestly, I'll be completely honest, I only knew you as a creator, and now I know you as a storyteller, much more of an artist than I knew. Because a lot
of people don't realize you're thinking this kind of stuff.
Well, yeah, I mean, they know you from Smoke, and they know you from, all your other effects. They know you're good with electronics, but who knew? Who knew you were such a theater buff in the sense that you love to storytell and you're good at it and you think about this stuff. So I love that. I wouldn't
know if I was good at it, but I like it.
Well, it sounds like you're good at it. And I also want to, not to put any pressure on you, but if there's anything that you feel hasn't come up in the interview that you think is worth sharing, anything that you can think, of parting words or anything like that, now would be the time to do that. If not, again, thank you for coming on the show.
Yeah, we did on the creating side of things. We touched upon why I create and how. One thing I really would love to even push forward is for anyone coming up who are getting into making props or who would like to but don't know how. Start doing it now. Like back when I was coming up, I had to hand sculpt and hand build and make everything. But nowadays you can buy like a 3D printer for about $100, which is decent enough and will get you by to make props. So if you can, save up your pocket money or you take a couple of bucks out your wage per month and buy a 3D printer. For God's sake, just buy one. They're not hard to learn. There's thousands upon thousands of tutorials on YouTube teaching you how to use every single type of one out there. And they teach you how to use all the design software that's out there. There's even design software that is free that you can use to make up your own props and then print them. I don't get why a lot more people aren't doing it. It was nice this year at Blackpool to see a couple of stands putting forward more 3D printed orientated props because they can, and it lets you rapidly try that kind of stuff out. But it's I think it needs to become more mainstream in the sort of magic community because it will help everyone's magic along if you can create a unique thing just for you, and you don't have to like go and find someone that can design it for you, someone that can then build it and make it and all that kind of stuff, or send away to China to have a factory make it. You can get one of these machines for like $100 and do it in your room in your own time.
Okay, I think that's good. I think that's valuable.
So weird statement, I get it, but I just realised I didn't touch on the sort of 3D printing side of things when I was talking about making. And it's a valuable thing. I wish I'd bought this thing sooner. Truly do. Even for the movie props and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, the amount of magic things I made on here so far that I can't really tell people about is astounding.
Yeah, I don't like that. I like to hear about your works, and it pisses me off that it's all secret.
Well, should I tell you about this? Screw it. This will be nice.
Ooh.
I kind of hinted to this on my wall the other day. This ties in with both. So I made up this little unit. Now, again, the electronic side of it is some of it is own platform, some of it isn't. Now, there's a lot of things out there just now that will let you like have someone write down something on a notepad, and then you can see it. And there's a couple of other people that are using things that will mirror things from one phone to another, but you need a weird app and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. This forgoes all that. Every last bit of it. I even just put out on my lecture a piece that showed you how to mirror one phone screen to another so you can peek information, all that kind of stuff. This little unit I have made here will do it itself.
Oh my god.
The other person doesn't need to have an app on their phone. As long as you're connected to the Wi-Fi this is emitting, you can peek everything. So this is my little beast. And again, the whole casing for this, before I'd have had to have made this out of warbling myself, or went and had it made in China or that kind of thing. I just went into 3D Max and made up a basic box that had a port where I could charge it, a bit that isn't going to restrict the antenna, and that was it. And this just plugs into the back of any power source. If I walk into a venue, I put it in the back of the TV just now. A lot of people don't know that TVs have a USB port in the back. It's a good tip for when you're on holiday as well, if you need a spare port to charge something. But yeah, just a small USB port, plug it in the back of a telly and a pub, and no one ever notices it's there.
Dear God. Thank God you use your powers for fun and not evil. You could be a hacker.
There's other hobbies that I've not told you about. I'm only kidding. Yeah, this kind of stuff, I only learned that kind of stuff for the goods. If I don't know, that would lead into like another 20-minute statement, and you don't want that, do you?
No, it's already getting to be an hour.
On the tech side of thing, the one thing I will say is just password your phone. Don't let anyone else see your password. Because the amount of stuff that's coming out just now, and a lot of guys are putting stuff out magic-wise that seems, in a magic sense, like teaching it in a magic sense and using some of the techniques as a trick is all fine. But the technique used can be very dangerous. Like it can get your information everywhere. So just be aware of that as well.
Wow, okay. Get a 3D printer and lock your phone. Got it.
Yeah. And it's also been my pleasure. You've actually been... I know I ramble a lot on these kind of things, and it's been nice to actually have someone fire back with good questions.
Oh, well, thanks. I actually enjoy rambling. I always well, this time I didn't say anything about it, but I often encourage the guests to ramble because that just means they're talking about things that interest them. And if they're interested, then the listeners are often interested. So yeah.
I just think I like the sound of my own voice. I think that's all it is.
Oh well, sure, that too. I mean, that's Scottish. You have to use it. You have it, so use it, right?
Oh yeah, and I implore anyone who wants to go turn on the closed caption for this because you will get a laugh.
It's gotta be great. All right then, Alan. Thanks for coming on the show, and have a good day.
It's been absolutely my pleasure, and thank you kindly.